welcome. Geek Out 61. It is over Watcher's Test by Sean Oswald. And oh my, this one of those books where I it answers the question or adds to when people tell me they don't like video games, I just want to ask them the only way that's true, or if you just enjoy the void and the nothingness of non-existence, that's the only way you don't like video. And lit RPGs are much the same for me, and this one doesn't follow the meta or the typical MMO. Yeah, so this one is very exciting for a lot of reasons. Primarily because normally, or the meta is someone who is an avid gamer, excited about a new launch, gets sucked into the world. But for this one, it's someone who, casually plays on the side, is a responsible adult with his family of four or three kids, wife, him. Okay, five, if I can count. Family of five. And, life just doesn't play fair sometimes. So, you're on your way to a relative's house, and then all of a sudden the kid screams in the back. You look back, she's looking forward, you look forward, and portal to another world. So it's definitely not a typical lit RPG, but it does a great job feeling real and getting you invested and dedicated in the characters themselves and their moral compass and their real world struggles, and as well as like really playing up the fantasy bit. And it takes a lot of elements from typical lit RPGs or MMOs, but then it spruces it up with like a fantasy. There's no set path. You have to live up to it and you have to own it mentality.
Yeah. Like you were saying, this kind of has a different take on the whole lit RPG genre. And you listened to it before I did, and you were telling me about it and everything. And I was kind of like, wait, what? A whole family goes teleported to another dimension, world, or whatever. And I was like, man, like how would that necessarily work? And it did it really well. And a lot of the typical, actions or ways that the main character would handle certain challenges and just like min max its stats to build the perfect build, his choices got altered because, he said himself, Dave, the main character, lawyer, father turned, oh man, I don't even know. I cheated. I listened a little bit
Or I was
further.
gonna
I
say,
was like,
end of book one,
almost,
he
almost
doesn't have
slipped,
a
almost
class,
slipped. End of book one, he doesn't officially have a class yet.
but he's primarily taking the tanking role.
Hmm.
If you were thinking typical dungeon dive mentality, he's trying to take the tanking role,
Yeah,
be
yeah,
the front line.
and as a father, I could certainly relate to a lot of his choices throughout the story because we've talked before about our typical roles. I love going and playing a healer class or a tissue paper cannon class or something, right? Yet, Dave, the main character, very much the same way. He's like, oh man, like here I am, all my fantasies, becoming reality. I could cast magic. And then he's like, oh my goodness, but my wife is here. My two daughters and my son are here. Like, I can't ask them to tank this. So I have to take that upon myself and be the tank and throw himself into that role. And gosh, like I got a good old chuckle out of it when as he's going through the character creation process, he's like, oh, my wife would kill me if I pick one of these other races and everything. It's like scrolling through them, and it's like, wait, dragonkin? I could be dragonborn? Oh, wait, like all this other stuff, like, oh, like epicness and everything. And sure enough, like the wifey, Sarah's
Ends
a
up
daughter.
picking a dark elf. Oh, yeah, Sarah's a daughter.
Anyway,
Trying to
our
remember her name.
our mother, nurse, volunteer activist, et cetera, um, she ends up picking a dark elf. So the children end up becoming half dark elf and half human because Dave goes with the typical human class, or not class, race. And yeah, it was just such a fun story. Um, I really appreciated how they built it up. A lot of these stories, you don't get to spend a whole lot of time in the real world, but here we got to see a little bit. He's a lawyer who works too much, tries to make it to his son's baseball game. All he can think about is how excited he is to do raid night with his buddies, et cetera, et cetera. And, gets home and the wife is like, "Hey, we're going to my last living grandmother's." Like, "No. What do you mean? Like, you're not going to blow this off to play some video game?" And um, I mean, how many times have we heard the dialogue that they have over like video games being a vice, right? People dogging on it as a hobby and everything. And he's like, at least I'm not going out drinking. At least I'm not going out and doing all this other stuff. I'm staying at home playing video games and everything. And sure enough, he tried to recruit his family several times to get him to play video games. Um, and the wifey wanted to be in one of the games they played. She wanted to be a ninja, right? And
And
so like she's like, haha, I'm finally going to get to be my ninja. And she picks her dark elf healing ninja. Um, so yeah, I got a good chuckle out of that. Um,
yeah, the family dynamics are great. Like it feels very real, and
mhm.
then it takes it and kind of breaks it down to where like the beginning when the father's like, "Oh yeah, I know all about this. I'm going to be great. I'm going to be awesome." And then the people who are just doing it by feel and don't have prior expectations are being successful and gaining their
Mhm,
classes, and he's like,
mhm.
"Wait, what? Oh, I was supposed to be able to do that." And
Doesn't every gamer think that though? Like that's where with this book, I feel it did so well. Every book has its flaws, right? But the characters felt so believable for me, and like every gamer thinks like, oh yeah, like just throw me in the video game world and I'd be epic. And Dave's no exception to that. Um, but it does a good job, even though it's a lit RPG, it also reads like a fantasy book. And even though you have the video game mechanics there, um, we haven't had to deal with any respawns, right? So it's still
or
very
it
much.
it we had one
We had one respawn.
kind of. Um, I want to say that was book one. Anyway, so we had one where the daughter dies as she's leveling up, but she has access to one of the kinds of magic, and so she gets a perk where every time she levels, she gets fully restored, and they literally get to
Mm.
watch her die, and then she comes back to life. Yeah, that was book one because
Uh,
that was
was it at the end of the
where
battle?
no, it was towards the beginning. It was the youngest tamed the frog because yeah, they were being attacked by the frogs,
I don't
and
remember that.
then the older daughter dies, levels up, gets revived, and then the youngest daughter is like, "So can I keep him?" They're all like, "Wait, what?" And then this
Uh,
is yeah, that's like right towards the beginning when he's like, "Well, we need a power level. I need to go off and fight all these." And then the mother's like, "No, you just need to get quests because quests give you so much more XP." And he's like, "Wait, what? When did this happen?" And it was yeah. Yeah, we
uh,
totally kind of had a respawn,
okay,
but then
okay.
from the main King's Special Forces guy, Mark? No,
Max?
Max.
I
Yeah,
think it's Max.
him. He
Yeah.
he gets the opposite side where he's dealt with a lot of loss, and it's curious. We get tidbits into his
Mhm.
backstory for
Mhm.
how probably had a daughter and she passed away, and
Mhm.
then as well as while he's trying to come out to this basic little farming village or logging village, and most of
Yeah.
his team just gets obliterated. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel it dealt really well with that. It's always interesting to see how the stories handle the different, like, power dynamics. I get annoyed real quickly when main characters just get so overpowered so quick, and I definitely didn't feel that in this story. Like, yeah, they had some interesting skills and abilities, but I never got the sense that they were overpowered. What's your perspective on that?
So not overpowered, but from a different world.
Yes.
It was very much like the team dynamic, which helped them succeed, as well as the Watcher did help them out, and
Mhm.
that's a whole like unique, interesting concept. And sorry, sidestep. Ascend Online does something similar
Okay.
where when you first load into it, you speak to creation, and that is how
Mhm.
you create your character. And there's
Mhm.
one little snippet in the first book where, they respawn, but after he dies, he kind of sees this weird, like, godly type thing. And then we get like little hints of, the good
Mm.
god and the bad god, weaving the tapestry, and we get to see a little bit of that going on. Okay, step back on The Watcher. It does it very uniquely to where it's essentially saying, "I am the forever cosmic being that has been here, and there's this other being who has a different orientation that
Yeah.
we end up finding each other, and the only thing in common is that we ended up asking a question instead of accepting reality as life or life as reality." And it's a very short snippet in the very beginning that we get to see
Mhm.
it,
Mhm.
but pretty much they hinted at that they're going to be bringing 12, or they're going to do 12 tests of people that
Mhm.
they bring to the world. And then, throughout um, the different people that they bring with our main party that we're with, they kind of agree on how much help they're going to give them. And that's where,
Yep. Yep. Third cosmic being, the author pulling all the strings.
oh,
Yeah.
yep, there you go.
Yeah. Um, yeah. Thanks for hanging out, Kit. Um, I'm with you. I feel that it did it really well because more often than not, it's kind of like, hey, so how's this all working? How are they pulling us into this world? Or, what's
And it's
the
only with the
anime genre you always
melding
quote?
of powers. All right,
Mm,
it's only with our powers combined, and they each
uh,
have different mentalities. And like, I'm not gonna say Ascend Online too many more times,
oh, we
but
know you love it.
it has a lot of similarities that I truly love and enjoy. Sidestep,
Mhm,
Ascend Online, the main character almost gets killed by a monster, which then
mhm,
becomes his nemesis. Step back, the Watcher's test has, a throwdown where he almost, completely wipes out a pack of, I forget what they are, but essentially dog type
Yeah.
things. And now he's got a hatred level with that, monster, as well as other things that happen. And now they've developed a dungeon that literally the title or the name of the dungeon is, oh, our main guy's tomb. And it's just, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
there's a lot of similar elements, but it does it very uniquely. I guess that's what I'm
Well,
trying to get at.
we've talked about that before, and even authors will say that like there's only so many different types of stories, but it comes down to how you tell the story and
Or,
what
well,
all.
inspiration, why you enjoy
Mhm.
it is why you wanna tell something about it, and, yeah, they do a lot of things very unique and different, like the no respawn, like, you can only gain so much XP based off of your origin,
Yes. Yes.
gods are real,
Yes.
and they get, free pass for everyone to be able to ask for help once.
I really appreciated, and we've called this out before in other games where the Watcher granted them like some base stats based off their experience, which I thought was cool because it's
Yes.
always that question like if this is really them transitioning and transferring, like how does that experience get quantified and applied to the new realm? So, like with Dave, he's a black belt in Taekwondo, I believe. Sound right?
Yeah, martial
And
arts of sorts.
right, and then he's a lawyer, so like that
Diplomacy
transfers
stat.
diplomacy stat, right? Um, he was a Marine, or maybe not
So
Marine. He was in
his
the military.
survivalist
Hmm.
for, I think, Desert Storm, they quoted.
Yeah, track star, like all this stuff, and same thing with like everyone else. Like their experiences get quantified and transfer over, which I thought was a very cool concept for this book.
As well as they literally said all your assets have been liquidated and transferred into the currency, as well as the value of your vehicle, which I
Right.
I got a kick out of. I thought that was hilarious
Uh-huh.
because typically conversion you always lose some. But anyway, like that was
Uh,
just, as well as like your body and soul were ripped asunder, and then we used your body to fuel the catalyst to build you a soul, and
uh-huh.
we're gonna give you a body. It's
Uh-huh.
just, yeah.
Yeah. It did it really well. And curious your thoughts on it, but I really appreciated the pacing. I remember the first time listening through it, I was kind of like, okay, we're getting some of the details of the wider world. We're getting to see like the goblins here, getting to see this village there. Like, how's it all going to come together?
So,
And I appreciate they didn't just throw them right into the village, right? They get put into this world and they kind of have to start figuring things out these first couple days, right? Go ahead with your thoughts.
I felt like it was very well done due to Dave being a human and the missus being a drow or dark elf. They ended
Mhm.
up in the middle of those two territories where more or less the area they're in is contested. Beautifully done.
Makes sense.
It did a great job in the beginning. At first, it felt kind of weird because it was hard for me to track chronologically, timescale wise,
Mhm.
but it did something for one person, and then it did kind of like a backstep and switched perspectives. So it was good because it helped develop the moral compass and the understanding and, feeling committed to the characters.
Mhm.
But it was a little hard to track for first time through. Um, but yeah, I think they did really well with, a literally everything you had in the other world has been, converted into currency here. Set them up that way, as well as some basic gear. which, isn't unheard of. Put them in a good spot for between where their races would have ended up anyway. And
Right.
then it is very leading it because you get to see a little bit over here, you get to see a little bit over there. We're
Mhm.
introducing us to the world
Mhm.
without diving too much into the character's backstory. And by the end of one, I was like, okay, well, we're going to be the middleman. We're going to save all races and we're going to bring everybody together, Care Bear style.
Yeah, yeah. With our
So,
powers combined.
yeah, our
Um,
Captain Planet.
yeah, yeah. Oh, sorry, Care Bears. Care Bear stare?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, Everybody can tell we have younger children. Um,
Yeah. I
oh,
always keep
lost my thought.
bring out my handy dandy notebook and they're like, somebody watch Blue's Clues.
Of
I'm like,
course.
swipe or no swiping. They're like, Dora? Yeah, yep.
Yeah, yeah. Well, their youngest is around 8 years old, so we get a full range of perspectives in the story, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, it helps give our main characters extra factor because
mhm.
yeah, yeah, just yeah.
Yes, yes. Um, oh, brain fart. What was I going to say? Oh, one of the things I really appreciated is like as much as it is a lit RPG, there were a lot of those challenges that you would be faced as like a typical fantasy. Um, like with the converting all their currency over, they had to end up splitting up their money to where different people helped carry it because like
Yeah, because of weight
platinum, gold.
penalty.
Yeah, yeah, which makes sense. Like a lot of times, you get playing games, and I think back to my World of Warcraft days. You're like, okay, so I'm just like cruising around here with 2,000 units of gold or whatnot. It's like okay, um,
Yeah, but it hints at the fact that there could be bags of holding.
mm-hmm,
I
mm-hmm.
mean, yeah, yeah.
Um, Kit said he likes pop culture references, probably too much. How do you feel about pop culture references in your books?
So
Um,
I feel it adds a little reality to it, and that's
uh-huh.
where like this book did it a little different. It wasn't as much of the pop culture references. Um, I enjoy them a lot from Dakota Kraut, who does
Oh, the
the
puns.
Divine Dungeon series, and that's
Mhm.
more like pun intended.
Yeah.
Like our main guy who finds everything is Elon Musk, but it's not, but it
Uh,
is. And then, if
Space
you look up
Y.
Elon Musk, yeah, it's literally him with his nerf gear and everything else.
Right, right.
I think it adds a lot of credibility. I think the problem is in the future could be dated,
Mm,
but it's yeah, I
I
enjoy it.
I think it helps add, a layer of realism to the story, like, a little bit more of that relatability that like, "Oh, yeah, these people are supposedly, transferred from our realm," and you can relate back to how they feel and the colloquialisms or whatever that they drop that, just don't mesh with the new, um,
Yeah, I guess we
realm.
have a lot of those where it's like they say something, but it doesn't get translated because magically they can speak common.
Right, right.
Like,
Um,
I think Ninja was one that didn't get translated. They had to explain it, and
yeah,
they were all, like, appalled. They're like, "What? She's the daughter of Chanel. She's of
right. "Oh,
redemption."
no. This holy individual. Why would you wanna do that?" Um, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting seeing the differences in culture, right? As they stay with the mayor and everything, and there's like, what? Like you're letting this priest cook? Like, oh my goodness. and like, what, you cook? Like, oh, and then
Yeah, that whole conversation, a world where oh, what was it? I can't remember the line. Pop culture lets you build a deeper layer patience from the world if you properly use. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. Um, yeah, it just like everything, there's a fine balance. Um,
Well, the writing style for this, it does well. It didn't have so many direct pop culture references, but I was quite satisfied with the end where we're like, "Wait a minute, what? You were brought here from Earth too." Bum
yeah,
bum bum.
right.
But at the same time, for this book, it seems a lot more, I guess, age related because we get to see, you know, when the youngest almost gets attacked or taken out by the
Mm,
frogs. We get to
yeah.
see she's from Earth and, she isn't taught all the dangers of the new world that we're in. And she's, la 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 la, and gets attacked.
Speaking of that too, I really appreciated this book how, like in other stories, I kind of feel that disconnect where it's like, okay, like so the rules here are different, right? And they talk about that with like the regenerative properties that people have with their bodies and everything. And as they start to spend time in the village, I forget which character it is, but they start reflecting on how the parents, it's not that they don't tell their kids not to be careful, but they don't stress it as much as they would back on earth because like almost any injury, unless it's like really debilitating, eventually heals over time. And I really appreciate the fact that like it kind of helped, like I
Yeah, we
lose
we got
the
to see the initial culture shock
mhm.
where everybody was more or less handing the resume to the father and
Yes.
looking at the daughter like a side of meat, as he says.
Hmm.
But that was just a cultural difference. We got to think feudal society, medieval times where they don't live as long.
Hmm.
And it is more of a custom, older times to ask the father if you can have the daughter's hand in marriage. And I guess some people, keep on with it a bit and will ask
Different
later.
different
But
cultures.
we get to see that as well as the age difference where, their oldest daughter is still considered a child in their eyes or
Mhm,
in Earth standards. But in, Alaria,
mhm.
Alaria,
Age of majority is 15.
yeah,
Mhm,
they're considered an adult, and so we get a little bit of that dynamic back and forth. But yeah, for
right.
what you were talking about prior, I think the big reference was there's a kid who younger and is literally allowed to walk 2 miles to go to the river to pick up a pail of water and walk back where
Mhm.
Earth standard, that's not okay. Like,
Well, again, it depends on the culture, but this family was middle class Midwest America, and so, like, their perspective of things, clearly very different, and I it helped me with the immersion, the fact that things that as a reader you start to notice and ask questions of, the main characters also notice, and the author kind of helps us follow along with them because like as they're asking these questions that we would be asking, like it just it helps. It doesn't pull me out of the story. I feel it adds to it.
yeah,
um yeah, yeah.
as well
um
as like for the monsters, that's normally so Brandon Sanderson, sidestep, join me for a ride, does well showing both perspectives. So typically we get the good guys, we get the bad guys in a story. but Brandon Sanderson does a great job showing both sides. I will
Mhm.
not say the Watcher's Test is up to that level, and they're not even in the same genre, but we do get to see a bit of the troll hierarchy. We get to see a little bit of the goblin hierarchy, get
Mhm.
a glimpse in this book of the elven community as well as the king, and it's done well because for a goblin, you don't think of them as super intelligent, and we kinda get, like, these weird vibes or feels from the goblin where he's like, "Oh, I shouldn't have these thoughts. Oh, ooh, shiny. Oh, this. Oh, that."
The scout
And,
clink.
obviously, there's other stuff going on in the background. I get the vibe or the feel that the other cosmic being is influencing him, but we don't know. That's speculation, but it does well following through and going through it, and then like, it's just such a small book element, but then it also is a convenient way to save our bacon as we go forward, because the goblin is under the floorboards where another rodent burrowed, ends up getting into his complin or contemplations, that's the word I'm looking for, and ends up, like, moving and hitting something and making a noise. So then now our main character's like, "What is that?"
Right.
And just, like, being in this environment and the life or death struggles that we end up dealing with, now on
Mhm.
high alert, and then he's messing around with his stats, and he's like, "What? The British are coming." Not really, but we get that whole, like, was such a unique, subtle element, and then being able to tie it together, and after seeing that, and then where we end up at the end of the book, where the mother is an elf, the kids are halflings, the father is a human. Yeah,
Yeah.
it does a good job encompassing it all.
It does, and, we got to know the characters early on in their natural environment, so when they made the transition, their skill sets and their thought process made sense, right? Like, the reason why, um, Dave, the main character, is able to recognize some of these things, like when you said, quote, unquote, "The British are coming," when the goblins led by the Death Knight, um, he's an undead knight creature. I forget the actual class title, but he's
That was
able to,
another funny moment, but
yeah,
continue.
he's able to recognize their formations, even though like he can't see them and the limitations on the spell, but because he has like a military background, he's like, oh my goodness, I'm able to see that they're, approaching, with kind of like a leapfrog type thing where, a small pocket moves forward, covers for the next group, and then the next group moves forward, covers for the next group.
Yeah.
And again, like that's just stuff that just kills the immersion for me when you got like ultra geek who, yeah, okay, maybe he plays video games, like et cetera, but just because I play Total War and think I'm a master strategist in general doesn't mean that it's going to translate if I go to, another dimension that I could then manage, a massive army of, several thousand, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
it very much takes the real world
mhm.
applications, as well as the big thing with the oldest daughter, how she's like min-maxing currently, and she's putting it all into
Big
intelligence.
brain.
But you get to see like he's obviously hinting at more to come.
Mhm.
Where, yeah,
The
uh,
foreshadowing was done well in this book. So, okay, enough gushing over how underappreciated this book is. We'll do some um, standalone content for that. If you haven't already, like, subscribe, et cetera, et cetera.
or
Um,
Bell.
Yeah, click the bell, you know.
Get notification, see when they come
Sure,
out. I love
sure.
me.
Yes, yes. Um, yeah, let's talk about the final um
Battle,
battle because I
beautiful.
appreciate how well, yes, it was done, right? Like they finally get to the village. Um, they're already stronger than most of these people, so he gets elected as sheriff. He's trying to figure out how to keep this place safe. I love how like the family dynamic, the wife's able to kind of like push him into deciding to stay there until they can kind of like figure out their new life. So,
Or
um,
well, that sidestep, the whole like way they got accepted into the town for her being a daughter of Chanel, the
mhm,
daughter or the goddess of redemption, and
right,
then them being like, "Hey, we'll build a temple, we'll heal you for free." You know, everybody feels like they won was
yes,
great, and then the internal struggle of Dave, our main guy, who is trying to find something to do, and then ends up becoming the sheriff. Yeah. And then, sorry, back to where we're at. We get the goblin who's under the floorboard who makes a noise, which
mm,
then Dave is looking at his stats, end up getting a new skill, seeing the stuff. Like it had so many moving parts because we got to see a little bit of the inner workings of the goblins. We
mhm,
got to see the inner workings and the struggle of, oh, what is it? The purple and gold coming from the king. And then we got to see, oh, what's his name? Mark? Oh, Max?
which
Not
one?
Max. The
Oh,
lead purple and
yeah,
gold guy.
yeah.
We got to see him deal with his, monsters on his way in and the struggle and his duty and, obligations to the king. And then he sees the fires because the goblins are trying to torch the town, and that just triggers everything. As well as like there was a lot of oh beep moments
Yeah.
where oh our bacon was fried, like our goose was cooked, our time was up, like we should have been done. But due to the watcher and due to asking for forgiveness and due to being able to think and act under pressure, everything, well, not everything, but a lot of things work out well because we still lose a lot of people. And, you know, he, our main guy, literally is trying to take out the scouts because he doesn't want enemies behind him, ends up, scaring a group of people, turning a corner just to
Mhm,
have them chuckle about it, move on, and then now the mother's dead because another goblin popped up behind him, and
mhm.
then having to deal with the emotional struggle of that. But because he's military and, everything else, he's able to caramelize? What's the
Yeah,
word?
yeah.
What's I'm thinking of?
Carton the now you got me mixed up. Cart
Car
compartmentalize. Blah, blah,
Yeah,
blah.
anyway, put it into a nice, neat little box and, pretty much say, "Hey, take care of the living, we'll mourn the dead later,"
Yeah, yeah.
as well as, like, oh, man, just, the end battle was great, and so we've got the purple and gold coming in from one angle. We get to
Mhm,
see goblins and the hobgoblins and Death Knight coming from the other angle. We've
mhm,
got this new town that we are trying to bring out of the medieval ages
mhm.
and trying to save people, trying to do our job, do our duty. And then, yeah, there's just so many elements. Great battle. We get the whole aha, you thought you were the leader? Just kidding. I'm a goblin. Now I'm the leader.
Yeah,
Bow down.
yeah,
Just for him to be like, oh no, I'm melting. Really? Really? You thought that would work? Do you know who I am? And then for that to
yeah.
flip. and then him just start throwing the smackdown on our main guys just for them to be like, could totally use a little help here." And Chanel shows up and she's got like this crazy long cast time ability that saves our
Mhm.
bacon for a little bit.
Yeah, and I appreciated that moment right there because it wasn't like, "Oh, instant cast, gonna do all this epic stuff." It's like, "No, like, we need to channel this energy in order to help us." So you got that kind of like, stand your ground type moment there, right?
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, and oh, what is it? The mayor's daughter also has some skills, so she's able to kinda help them fight along there, and the mayor is actually was he a retired military mage? Does that
Yeah,
sound
pretty
right?
much. And that's all it's kind of backwards where all the nobles are actually higher leveled and higher skilled people,
Mhm.
and you get to see a little bit of that when he's going through his sword forms, and he's
Okay.
never used a sword, but
Right.
he's going through it, the little kid sees him doing it, brings more people along, and then he's like, "Well, I guess I'm essentially a monster to these people, you know, I could clear the lot of them with no effort," and then he starts flexing where he does his whole, like, "I'm gonna parkour slash bind my feet to this wall, run up the wall, do a backflip, and ram the sword into the ground." Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, oh, yeah, when he's, doing his yeah, mixing his sword moves with, his taekwondo bit and everything.
yeah. As well
Yeah,
as,
yeah.
like, the unique application of power when he uses his binding spell in different ways, and that's what's exciting about this world that Sean has built is there are powers and then there's application of power. Like the
Mm,
binding does so much and he doesn't always succeed. While we're
mhm.
in the throwdown with the final death knight,
Right.
he doesn't, you know, they don't get the coup de grace right off the bat, and he's afflicted by some sickness debuff, and he fails the roll on his concentration check.
Yeah.
And we have this moment where the lead silver and gold guy who's already been through so much is, done his part, but now our guy can't follow through and clutch the win just yet.
Mhm.
Giving you them feels.
It also helps us kinda grasp the difference in power, right? They break down the tiers to where every 10 levels is considered a tier, right? And, Max, I believe it is he tier 3 or tier 4?
I wanna say tier 3
I think you're right, I think he's tier 3.
because he wanted to get his squad up to 2.
Mhm, and then at the end of book 1, most of our family well, the ones of majority that can actually
Level
level and do their
appropriately.
stuff. Mhm. They're between tier 1 and tier 2, right? Does that sound right?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
wanna say
I think maybe they get pushed into tier 2 after the battle.
yeah, and I can't remember if the Chanel ability was in relation to the faith points or was in relation to got enough XP. No, because they couldn't gain XP until the end of the engagement,
Right, right. Um,
which that's another, like, very interesting, unique elements that I just thoroughly enjoyed when back up to the beginning when Dave is fighting the wolf life things who are now his rival slash mortal enemy. He
yeah,
doesn't get any XP until the pack is taken care of. So it changes your mindset because we all know
mhm,
how convenient it is to almost die, kill something, level up, and be like, "Do you know who
yeah.
I am?"
I've definitely tried to time some of those moments while playing MMOs. It's like, "Oh no, health is getting low. Oh no, everything's on cooldown." Start tabbing through like, "Who's low health? Who's low health? I'm so close." Um, but yeah, and the book does a good job, um, yes, you can't treat it like a game, and even though it has like game-like mechanics, it's still very much real in a lot of ways, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So,
And that's where, back to what I was saying at the beginning, when people say they don't like video games, I would argue that you haven't found the right game because video games can be anything from, if you're into sports, they have sports games. If you're into, if you're military, they have military-esque games. If you're
mhm,
into, whatever you enjoy doing, there is a game that can emulate slash simulate your enjoyment. And that's where this one strikes higher for me now because I do have a wife and a kid, and it would be a very interesting, unique, dynamic experience
uh-huh,
where I would, probably more so enjoy something like Ascend Online or Ritualist style, where, there are respawns and this, that, and the other, but it's a very unique, interesting, subtle on the stats
mhm,
book.
yeah, yeah. Not too overwhelming on the stats. Um, it's just yeah. Some people are a Candy Crush. Other people are World of Warcraft slash no lifers.
Yep,
And then there's everything in between. Um, yeah,
very true.
back in the good old days when we could no life some MMOs like it was a full time job.
Oh man, yeah, not gonna get into it, but
Yeah, yeah. Reeling it back in before I forget. Kit has hit us with some awesome book recommendations from other authors, and Kit himself also has a handful of books. And double checked, it is on Audible, so we have some new books to work into our wish list to try to catch. Gosh, like Audible is freaking killing me with all these sales. I keep getting notifications that hey, something on your wish list is now on sale. It's like okay, okay, take my virtual link in. That way I can have an audiobook to binge on. Um, yeah, yeah. Having so much fun in the subgenre of lit RPGs. Um, so coming back around at the end of the battle, one of the big moments for me that kind of surreal moment where like as a gamer you're always like, man, min max, get the most epic class, et cetera, regardless. And then here we have Dave in there as a father and husband trying to protect his family. And this isn't a game, it's their reality. And he gets offered the Death Knight class. I think it was referred to
yeah.
as Death Knight class. Like, I can't remember, but does he even stop and think about it? Because I would still be tempted. Like, I understand why he chose not to take it, but
He kinda
as
does because he's reading through it and he's like, "Oh, immortality, all these epic abilities. Oh, I just gotta, damn my soul." And
uh,
then the mother's like, "Wait, does that mean we have to fight it again? Because if he declines it, it's going
mhm,
to, like, reaccumulate somewhere else."
mhm, yeah,
And then
like
the
it.
daughter is like, "Well, that sounds pretty cool."
I'd be seriously tempted. I would really struggle between like, okay, yeah, maybe I become an undead, but just the epicness and the power to protect the people I care about in this world.
Well,
Um,
but I think it did it well by establishing the moral compass for our main guy when he
mhm,
is expressing and explaining to his daughter and his wife how he can't tell them what to do. They have to want to be, they will become. They have to want
right.
to be that class. And that's where we have the daughter get offered a class and to deny it, which, is pretty sad. But then, yeah.
Yeah. I enjoy Dave's internal struggle and dialogue, and just makes him seem so real as like as a father and husband. He's trying to be so proud and happy for everyone else who is getting classes and leveling up. And at the end of book one, yeah, he finally got offered one, but like he doesn't have his class yet, right? Like
Yeah, yeah.
our hardcore gamer of the group, if you could define him as much, is not quite there
Well,
yet.
yeah, that was an element that I thoroughly enjoyed. And another thing that this book did well is showing a healthy relationship. Like, life isn't perfect. Everybody goes through struggles, but because they have an established relationship and an understanding, and they've gone through these struggles elsewhere, they're able to kind of know where the other person stands, as well as how to help them. And then we get little snippets or flashbacks because, when Dave is trying to comfort his wife and he realized that nothing he can say is going to fix it. So, answer is not to say anything and just to be there for comforting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely a different element in the game that, like instead of main character gets teleported to another world where he gets his monster girl harem.
I was going to
Here
say harem.
here he is there with his family, and we get to see just all the different challenges, right? It's not just the life and death struggle, it's also how to um, not manage, but like help keep track of the emotions and the well-being of the family as they all deal with this shock. Um, I really gotta bite my lip here and not go too
Yep.
far
Yep.
because I don't want to.
One and with defeating the Death Knight.
Okay.
Our youngest daughter is kidnapped by a goblin.
Yes.
The youngest son is more or less traumatized from the whole event because he just got
Yes.
stabbed, and his sister just got taken by a monster. The I think our oldest daughter gets a class meta
Yes.
mage, and
Yes.
then the mother already had a class from the very beginning.
Yeah, she got a class and like 7 levels out the gate.
Yeah.
Um, yep, yep. And we pretty much confirmed that, all the hinting of Max that he is
Oh, yeah, yeah,
indeed
yeah. I guess that
from
was that was the big
Earth.
part, that's what I forgot.
Yeah. The town is like half burned down. We've lost a couple people. Um, yeah, gosh, like it's a lot of fun. I have gone past book one. We try not to sometimes when we start a fresh series, but gosh, I just got sucked in pretty hard. Um, yeah, final thoughts on the Watcher's Test, and do you have our next one ready to rock and roll? As
I
I,
do not.
that's quite all right. A lot of fun. If you guys have hung out with us this far, even though you haven't read it yet or listened to it like we like to do, definitely recommend checking it out. We really want to make some content on just the different flavors of lit RPG, because the more and more we spend time playing in this realm, the more yeah, different flavors and types we find. Like, not all lit RPGs are created equal, where it's our isekai nerd geek boy transferred to another realm. Um, and this one was a lot of fun. We have way too many books we're trying to geek out on, but yeah, yeah.
There we go, kind of.
Pete is a huge Alarong Kong fanboy. I enjoy his stuff too. I also am a huge Luke Daniels narrator fanboy, and God's Eye Awakening is finally out on Audible. So, on your mark, get set, go. Next Sunday, 5 p.m. Eastern, we are going to be geeking out on this book. I have actually had the opportunity to beat peek to it. I've started listening to it. I like it a lot so far. I'm probably about a third of the way in. But yeah, yeah.
So, for those who don't know, Alaron Kong coined himself as the father of LitRPG. He is currently 8 books deep in The Land, which is his other series he does, and it is everything a LitRPG should strive to be and more. It has beautiful sounders. It has solid game mechanics, foreshadowing elements, and just even without all the lit RPG stuff, the story structure of how the main character develops and we get the serious life journeys and, life kicking the beep out of us and for us to rise up to the occasion and be better, as well as sprinkling in the comic relief and just it's an emotional roller coaster. But if you don't want to go 8 books deep on the land, this is his side series, which is of the labyrinth, which is a big concept towards the end of the land, which is his way of saying they are not connected, but they are. This didn't happen, but I might do it. So
Leaving
it
doors
is
open.
book one. Start it, check it out. Phenomenal author. Yeah, excited.
Quick disclaimer, it is for more mature audiences. Some of these lit RPGs do a good job not kind of crossing that line, but this book does. So yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Definitely. Well, and so that's one of the things that I personally enjoy is it's a little more gruff and other sidestep backstory relevance. Alaron Kong used to be a doctor, and as far as the land's concerned, like he doesn't flex too much on his abstract medical knowledge, but you do get to see flavors of it throughout the land. I'm curious to see how much of that he implements in God's Eye. Because, for example, like when someone breaks a bone, he names the bone as it happens. And it's just like
mm,
one of those, I guess for me, I had to look it up because I was like, the what now? Like I understood it through the dialogue, but I still wanted, looked it up anyway.
yeah. Right what you know, right? Um, but yeah, with that being said, it's been a pleasure. Thanks to everybody who joined us live. Special shout out to those of you who engaged in the chat, especially Kit. And looking forward to geeking out with you guys next weekend.
I
Bye.